All right.
All right. Well, that was a quick intro. I didn't even get a chance to hit my music. Hang on. This is like a tradition. I can't. I cannot give this up.
You have a little sound bar?
I can't give that up, man.
Nah, I like it.
That's like my jam. It took me years to find the music that I actually liked.
I'm a fan. You got me. I'm hooked.
Yeah, man, it's very catchy. It's very catchy. Although I've got it over here on my Roadcaster, and I know there's ways to move it around, but Rob, you've had a busy week, my man. It's good to see you again.
You too. What are the other sound effects we got on the Roadcaster?
Oh my gosh, you want to hear some of them?
Sure.
How about well, how can I tell you? I'll fade this thing out right here, and then we're going to introduce Rob from Leap Advisory Partners.
Well, thank you. Well, I really like that.
Yeah, that's kind of cheesy. That's
I'm here
kinda
for
cheesy. And if you say something really stupid, I've got a lot of them. I actually haven't
I
played
got
them.
dad jokes if you want to hear them.
You got some well, you probably did some stand up, didn't you, down there at Dan's?
I did, but it was GPT generated.
Oh God, that could not have been good.
It was funny. I posted it online. It's on LinkedIn, so you can review it.
Well, look, here's your official banner. VP Sales, Leap Advisory. Look at that. For those of y'all that don't know, this platform, if you're looking at platforms to use for your content, I've switched to EV Mux. I was Riverside. I know a lot of people talk about Riverside. I did not have a great experience with them for a number of reasons. One of them is they're not set up for live streaming. This is technically not a live stream, but we could have made this go live. Very simple, and it gives me lots of controls. I've got two screens. That's why I kind of look up and down before we get started. But this, there's so much more control I have here with EV Mux. So let's say I can bring this banner down, and I've got this nice little scroll that I'm going to have here for you. How about that?
I mean, you're just educating the people. I appreciate that.
I mean, this is what we do. We don't just produce content. We teach. We are teachers.
I'm here for it.
Well, that's really what you do. And this is really why you're here today, because you and I kind of hit it off, fast friends. You're in this digital transformation space. I am, as everybody knows, I've just been doing this deep dive into it. And, okay, what is a kind of typical client that you're reaching, and what's like the state that they're in when you're kind of taking a look at their systems? They're thinking, hey, we need to upgrade what we're doing. What's kind of this, like the ideal prospect? What do they look like?
Yeah, so they've hit an inflection point usually in revenue. So you're thinking like 10 million, 25 million, 50, 70, like kind of the traditional ones. Sometimes all the way up to 100. We've worked with billion-dollar firms as well, and they're at that inflection point where they're not sure their systems are a lever for growth, and they don't necessarily have someone on, like a CTO or a CIO, right? More CIO in this case, on staff that has the strategy piece of it. Or, I mean, we've had $2 billion firms that don't have the strat, like a CIO for internal technology strategy.
That's hard to believe.
They just didn't. I mean, they didn't invest in it. They have the money. They have a CTO.
Clearly, you're hundreds of millions, billions. You don't have a CTO. That's kind of.
They have a great CTO that helps build product for them or for their customers, but not a CIO for internal use. So, or for strategy and delivery in terms of like their ATS, CRM, etc. So yeah, so they come in and they kind of know that they need technology to get to that next point, right? Wherever they're trying to track their growth to, and we can help.
Mm-hmm. So I think most leaders, they now know, okay, AI, it's not going away. It's advancing. We're starting to see, kind of AI creep everywhere. I think maybe we'll even get into this a little bit. I don't know if I know we didn't talk about this, but, Bullhorn just put out their grid report.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of
are using AI or dabbling, more than dabbling in it now.
Yeah. What's the percentage?
I think it was like 58 or 60 on the head.
Yeah.
Up from 44. So like last year we were talking about 44 using AI, 44 thinking about it or planning on it, and then like a 4% or some variation of there of like four, at least only 4% were not going to use it at all. And then there was obviously that doesn't add to 100. So there was the other. But we creeped up into the high 50s, maybe right on 60 from the grid report. I should have looked at it. Right. I could probably pull it up in 2 seconds, but it's nice to see that jump that people are actually using it. And yeah, there's still. But what's crazy, and Tony, this hopefully this doesn't apply to y'all, is that if the leaders of the company, I'm trying to think about the delicate way to put this.
Oh, don't be delicate. Let's
If the
just come
leaders
on,
of
rip
the
the Band-Aid
company
off.
are pretending like your teams are not using AI, they are. So first, get that out of your head. And I hate to break it to you, but if you put your head in the sand and they use AI and they put something that's PII or they connect your ATS to a open source model, that means all of your proprietary data, including PII, could potentially be hitting an open model.
Oops.
Which, thankfully, in the United States, we have terrible privacy laws. But if you're in the UK and your ATS is connected to something in the UK, you gonna get a fine.
Yeah, you're in big trouble. You have to be careful when you start connecting. Yeah.
Yeah. So the actual guidance is to have an AI policy that your team signs. You can steal one from the internet or have AI generate it. It's AI regulating AI. It's a new
Talk
thing.
to Grok. Have Grok will design one for you.
And then you should have a closed environment. I think one of our people were paying like $120 a month for all their AI environments, and we went to something called Chat LLM provided by Abacus, and now we only pay $10 a month, and we have access to 19 LLMs as well as other agentic features and coding and like code LLMs. So, big fan of Abacus, but there's other aggregators of LLMs that you can use. So, sign up, pay the fee, get a closed environment, get a policy signed by all of your employees, and get your head out of the sand. Even if you don't want to provide the AI, just get a policy in place so they know what they should and should not do, and you are CYA'd.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this because for those people who listen to the podcast who are not, I have people that listen that aren't just in staffing, or this is a business podcast, so people come in from all different industries to kind of see how they can improve their business. Thus, Jobtopia. When we talk about staffing, some people lump in recruiting, and with you and I being staffing people, I think we should separate and just explain this to people. So
You want me to
staffing,
explain the difference of staffing and recruiting?
just give the high level. There's a
Yeah.
difference between staffing and recruiting, and then let's talk about specifically which industries or which types of companies you're helping. It could be both, and some of the strategies could be different for each. So, what's staffing?
Yeah, so we don't I can answer the second question. We don't really discriminate. We help everybody, from like a search firm to a true staffing player. So recruiting is more of that headhunting. So you're doing direct hire
Yeah,
in the way that I think about it,
that's how I think about it.
and you. So yeah, that's fantastic. You hopefully if you're working with a great company, you are providing some value to that. Like if you're software company and your HR team is partnered with a search firm, right? Another word, or hopefully you trust them enough to maybe do retained. I'm a big fan of retained for recruiting or headhunting. There's a lot of effort that goes in to contingent search. I'm not a big fan by itself. It's not super. It's not a great way to.
Contingency, for people that don't know, is a company will not pay a fee until the person's hired. A retainer just means that there's enough trust up front that you establish a business relationship. The company is going to get paid regardless of the outcomes because of the effort that they put forward. And there's some triggers that get kind of paid out as the search goes along. So go ahead.
Appreciate that. So that's recruiting, right? And there's a lot of fantastic search firms that only do direct hire. Maybe it's so funny because like a lot of firms will be like, we do temp to hire, and you're like, well, then you're kind of a staffing agency too. You know what I mean? So it's a little different. But staffing itself is you're either internally being the employer of record, so the staffing company is the employer of record, or you have a EOR company that you work with that becomes the employer of record. That's kind of for insurance benefits, payroll benefits, etc. Getting bigger numbers or bulk rates, and then you are managing the onboarding. You are covering the workers' comp, all that good stuff, and you are deploying a workforce to any number of sites. So it could be it could be you and I, right? We're sitting at home, but we're IT coders or professional accountants or finance people, or we are going to a site and we are picker packers. So either way, like
Yeah.
we could be either one. The complexity of staffing versus recruiting, as you can see, has a lot more complexity on the staffing side of the world. You do get you have to have onboarding. You have to get I-9 E-Verify. You have to do a background check for the company. You got a lot of things you need to do in terms of compliance. If you are in healthcare staffing, the complexity layers on.
Right. With all the regulations. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got licenses. You got to check. You got to like, if they're a doctor, you have to check if they've had any issues with the medical staff office at any of the hospitals or facilities they've worked with. That's a lot of verifications and a lot of complexity for physicians. I think nursing's a little bit easier, but they do have licenses that expire and credentials that expire. So complexity with staffing, really low barrier to entry with recruiting. Have a lot of friends who started off as doing only recruiting and then built a little war chest and then moved themselves into staffing, which is kind of cool. And then if you are operating a business and the way that the economic macros and micros move, you almost want to have both, right? Because staffing is recurring revenue, and the a placement is more like a project. So like,
Well, it's a transaction. You know, it's a one time. Find a controller, find a sales manager. Thank you, project complete. And it's done.
Exactly.
But with staffing, this is your employee. So I've hired myself. I've got W-2s on these people. I send them out to work, right? And I bill the client, and I've got all kinds of liability that go with that. It's a much more complex business.
Yeah, the complexity increases, but like to the point, right, is recurring revenue, which is nice.
It's a recurring revenue model. It's fantastic. And so I didn't want to go too far in the weeds. I just want to give people just kind of a general kind of like, staffing, recruiting. So we'll kind of use those terms interchangeably, but technically they're very different. Now, when it comes to workforce transformation, I know you say you don't really separate, you'll work with any client. Where do companies see the greatest gain?
I'm working with a leap.
Yeah, or just even going through this workforce transformation. Is it because I would imagine can staffing companies see bigger gains? Can direct hire companies see bigger gains?
Yeah, I think for the sake of the conversation on a broad stroke, let's say speed is the most important thing.
Okay.
And when we talk about digital transformation, you have stages of digital transformation, right? At one point, we were servers in offices. That was digital transformation. And now we are from server to the cloud, and that's another stage of digital transformation. So everything's cloud-based. It's kind of where we are now, or we are currently. And if you truly want to transform your business, getting all of your data into a usable place creates a tremendous opportunity for speed. Want an example?
Listen, the data we've been preaching data.
Okay.
We've been preaching data. So I'm totally with you. I mean, if you've got a great example of trying to jump into workforce transformation or digital transformation before you've gotten your data cleaned up,
yeah,
probably I could see that'd be a nightmare situation because your expectations are through the roof and you can't get the automation going you want.
Yeah, and I used to be the person that preached that a lot. Tony, honestly, is like, get your data, like GYST, get your together. I'll leave the blank. I'm not sure if we're allowed to curse on this one or not.
Oh, of course. Let it rip.
Yeah.
Get your shit together.
GYST. And I used to preach that a lot, right, about your data. I sold automation. I sold a tool that helps data cleanup. And I have to say, in the world of AI, I don't like, there's legacy data and then there's like in real time data, right? And I'll
explain the difference between.
I'll explain the difference too.
What's the difference there?
So legacy data in a true staffing or recruiting, you can think about it in the sense of doing a match and like letting AI do your match for you, right? So you want and before AI, a lot of systems couldn't read into notes, right? Because a note wasn't structured data. A structured, and this is very nerdy, a structured data field would be something like a status or a phone number or their address or their job title, right? The type of field is different. Whereas like a note, the way that it was structured, like a note entry point, as was structured in ATS or CRM, you couldn't read it because it wasn't in a structured data field. So you would go to do a search, and it would only be reliant on structured data. And then you start to get things like a text kernel or a Dijkstra. Text kernel was bought by Bullhorn. Dijkstra, there's SourceBreaker. So these things that can start to look at unstructured data and continue and to mature the search. So if you have good notes, if you have good structured data, if you're using automation to keep those fields up tight, not relying on humans to enter things, then what you get is good match, right? That's legacy data. In real-time data, in comparison, is I get a resume, I get a job order, I compare them, and I create a submission write-up or something to send to the hiring manager to sell that candidate. So there's in real-time data, resume you have right now, job order you have right now, maybe a couple notes and an email. Boom, tie them together, put a bow on it, ship it, right? Do a write-up. So not all AI and automation is going to rely on that legacy data.
I see. You're talking about the front end, everyday, new data, new information coming in versus
It
you've
can
got this
create
old
speed.
legacy database with lots of people that you're just trying to go back in and maybe discover some old candidates or start a new, an email or a newsletter campaign, and you're trying to just organize everybody. Those are kind of two separate
Yeah.
operations, if you
So
will.
you can leverage AI and automation on both of them, right? But I don't think you need to stop all of your AI and automation ambitions because you have poor legacy data. Because there's a lot of speed that can be generated in real time. To
That's
what
a
I'm,
good distinction. Yeah, because I was kind of falling in the camp of thinking that, we need to get our
I was there for so long. You're good. I like
but no, but this is kind of like a natural. This for me, this is like a real time, reality check of. Well, no, what you're actually right. But let me ask you this: so there's a big push, and I'm a big believer. I love the idea of these AI chatbots that
yeah.
can kind of help do this quick interaction. Do those require the back end to be all nice and clean, or can you just let those operate on that front end?
It depends on what operate. So it depends on what operations you're going to
Just like top of funnel,
get. Top of funnel,
probably.
probably. That one's a little complicated because like, if you have bad legacy data and a candidate that you've been working with, or maybe like you worked with them for three
Oh
years,
God, I could see this already right now.
yeah. So the personalization issue becomes an issue, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like I've worked with you for 3 years. You paid me, and your chatbot doesn't know who the hell I am. It makes me a little nervous. Now, if it's a chatbot that is going to just either like, hey, what jobs match my background? Here's my resume. Here's my updated resume. You might be able to use the real time data to hack it and just get close.
And just kind of get them
Yeah,
weeded
and then
out and
and then
kind of
sort them
push.
to a human being, right? Like get
Yeah,
them
yeah,
to
yeah,
a
yeah.
human.
Right.
Um, so I would say that one is more of a depends,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So we hear this workplace, IT transformation, and I'm just kind of curious, like, what else is there to do? Like, I'm so kind of focused on AI right now. Like, there's got to be other areas that I'm just not looking at, or other people haven't even considered.
I mean, I'm just not a huge fan of a human being doing admin work.
Yeah.
So I'm on this kick of zero admin.
All right. So what does that tech stack look like, and what kind of what does it take to get from point A to point B?
Yeah, so you're gonna need obviously you have a system of record. you're going to need a system of record that has a strong automation tool. And if you think about, let's just kind of like give it an example. I got an application. Someone applied through a job board. Maybe it's your company job board. An AI chatbot or an AI like smart, not more than just a chatbot, like a smart conversation bot, has a pre-screening conversation with that candidate based on the job requirements, based on the resume, fills in some blanks. That candidate has been found to be qualified. So now everything that has happened in with that application. So we changed um, we changed the source on the candidate to website applicant, right? We change the candidate status to active because they just applied for a job. Maybe in 7 to 14 days, if we don't, depending on the type of candidate, if we don't get anything going with them, we move them to inactive, right? On that status. So like we've changed them to active. We log the note that they applied for this job. So we have the job ID, we have the candidate ID tied to each other. I'm again super nerdy. And then we have a note of the outcome of the pre-screen. And then we have the resume uploaded, however that gets uploaded into your system of record. And now that person is internally submitted or shortlisted for the job with a status of qualified. And the recruiter who's assigned to that job gets Tony, we could even put it so far that like, because they're qualified, we know the recruiter, we send the open count. AI sends an email.
You send the Calendly.
Yeah, with a book here. And now that recruiter walks in the morning because let's say 50%.
See, that's what I think we should be. I mean, to me, I think that's where we should be.
Yeah.
And you just have to kind of practice that system of pre-screening just to make sure it works to your liking.
And I think so again, dependent on type of staffing. So IT and like light industrial get a lot of noise in their applications, right? So the number of people applying, they get a ton of applicants. IT, they get people who aren't qualified, whether it's an H-1B visa issue or they don't live in the U.S. and they're just applying, right? So I feel bad for IT recruiters because they just deal with a lot of noise.
They're just getting spammed. They're just getting spammed with apps.
The salary is good enough that it often overcomes the stress, right? That's why we get like if you're a salesperson or a recruiter and you don't get paid well, the stress is not worth it. It is a very stressful thing. That's why you make the big bucks. So that like. And then light industrial, there's just a lot of people that apply, ideally, right? And
because the barrier to entry is pretty low, so you're at the bottom of the funnel, so you're going to have heavy volume right there. Let's focus on that area right there because that's an area that we play in automotive and logistics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, we see a lot of that. So
I love automotive.
Walk me through that.
It's such a cool thing. So,
what's a cool thing?
Automotive staffing.
Oh yeah, it's so volatile though right now.
I know. I support it a lot. Well, it's going to be very interesting as of 12:01 today. We're recording this on March 3rd, 2025, and we just had a whole bunch of tariffs hit. But we don't need to talk too deeply about that. But I think automotive staffing is neat because I supported Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, and a little bit of South Carolina, because a lot of the staffing companies that I supported were based in Atlanta, but had there's a lot of manufacturing plants in South Carolina, so I would support, or like automotive plants in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So Atlanta and South Carolina have a big automotive presence, and I would support them.
Yep. And Tennessee, and we're seeing that push up into Tennessee and Kentucky with SK moving in and partnering with Ford and Blue Opal and all the EV, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on. So we're involved in all that stuff.
Super. Yeah, it's one of the ones I had to learn the most about when I first got. I was doing physician staffing, and then they were like, "Hey, like you should learn IT, and IT's kind of easy. Professional's kind of easy, but like having an intelligent conversation about light industrial took a year of like figuring it out." So
you have to literally walk around. You have to put on your PPE, put on your steel toe shoes, and spend a lot of time out in the plants, talking with safety people, talking with the production managers and supervisors, and just watching how everything flows. It's a whole new ball game. It's not a behind the desk kind of job. You got to just
and that's where I came from with locums, right? Because it's like a much
more.
Oh,
you were locums, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a much more true inside sales kind of role.
Oh yeah.
And then they were like, "Hey, just go try and sell our
Like
software."
you don't sound like you understand the business until you get your hands dirty
No, I
and
had no idea. Now,
have
like,
still.
I've never got my hands that dirty, but I generally have heard enough that I can have an intelligent
Well,
conversation.
it's funny because when I go and do safety walks, because we just get so busy sometimes. They're like, "Hey, can you just
They
go?"
send you out.
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
and it's funny. So I was totally lost like over a year ago. I had no idea what I was doing. So it was like fake it till you make it. I was reading. I was just going through everything,
I love that.
and they'd look at me, and because of my, the little bit of gray in the beard, they always thought I was like some
Got it too.
executive in and I am an executive here, but not in safety. So I'd say, yeah, I'm the safety officer.
That's not a. There's a lot of liability in that.
Yeah, well, that's all right. That's all right. We got through it. We got through it. Nothing happened.
No, as long as nothing happened that day, you're good.
Yeah, nothing happened that day, although we did witness some things. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
So you get your, oh, I was going to say, when I went out on the floor, I would always have a pair of gloves in my back pocket. And so a lot of times I would put my gloves on and do something that I would see happening, so kind of quote unquote getting your hands dirty. And then by understanding that, that really helps me as a marketer. So that would help you again as a salesperson to understand, how to get through that. Okay, I don't know how we ended up here, but we were talking about workforce transformation.
Yeah.
Can you bail me out of where I
I thought it
just
was
ended
I
up?
thought it
I
was
think I ended up in a cul-de-sac.
It was a fantastic tangent. Whether or not we circle back to something else is it's up to you. But yeah,
Well, listen, we're not doing the 3 hour Joe Rogan where we can just kind of,
the rapid fire questions until something is interesting that he hears, and then he stops the questioning and goes
yeah,
for an hour, and then
yeah. It's kind of like I have to like,
yeah, it's a strategy. If you guys have ever, there's a book called "Stop Asking Questions." I don't know if maybe I'll tell you, like, recommend this to you too, or I'll get it for you.
oh, that's good. That's a good one.
It's about interviewing, and so he goes through like all these different interview types. I can't see it on it's somewhere on this bookshelf.
Stop
Um,
asking questions. That's a good one.
it'll be pretty, like, if you on Amazon, you'll find it pretty quickly. But it's about interviewing, and he was
Yeah. What's
like,
the what's the takeaway?
Joe Rogan has such an interesting interview style because he literally will keep asking the guest questions until he gets into an interesting answer, and then that's the rabbit hole they dive in for whatever period
Hmm.
of time. And then once they get done with that, once he exhausts that, whatever, or he's tired of it, he starts rapidly answering different questions again.
Yeah. So in other words, he's just kind of fishing for
It's
that
a
thing.
fishing
And I
interview.
think,
That's why it takes 3 hours, because there's not three. Like, I cannot listen to his podcast truthfully, and I've never been able to. But I'll go and find the clips, and I'll be like, oh, like, this is an interesting clip. That's an interesting, like. But to sit there for 3 hours and listen to him
so
do
here's
that,
how I do it. I load it up, and I do the same thing with a lot of podcasts.
2.0 it,
When I'm driving, I just listen to it.
yeah,
And if I get bored for a second, I'll just hit pause and forget about it for a while. And then next time I get back in the car, it just kind of restarts. I just don't close the app down. And that's how I get through. There are certain people that I want to hear. And
yeah,
I know what his style is. He's just trying to get to know people. I know he's ultimately just trying to get to know them.
yeah. And
Because
he's
he
fit.
doesn't have to,
His style
he
is
can
fishing.
interview anybody he wants.
Yeah, he interviewed one of the best, like, high school, like the best freestyle and Greco Olympic style wrestler, Jordan Burroughs, and I sat through that one. But I'm a fan of Jordan Burroughs, so
Exactly. And, you and I we're like a notch
yeah, I
down.
I well, yeah, a lot of giant. Yeah.
That's a joke.
Um, that's okay though. The So yeah, so getting back to digital transformation, by the way,
Yes,
or
please
this
take me out of the cul-de-sac.
yeah, this workforce piece. I think the other thing that you have to be conscious of is the work for pay versus work for outcome.
Okay, explain that.
Well, you have, and like the easiest way is like just to say, like, the gig economy is a work for outcome basis. An Uber driver either
Wait,
picks
I
up
would think that'd be work for pay.
they don't get paid on an hour. They get paid when they have a gig.
Okay.
So every time they deliver food or deliver a human somewhere, they get paid.
Oh, the outcome of finishing. Okay, I've delivered the food. I've delivered the person.
Because they're not catching an hourly rate. Maybe maybe if Uber's
Okay, work
identified,
for outcome. Yeah, I got
yeah,
it. Got it.
maybe if Uber has a event that they've identified in the area and they're like, hey, we need a lot of drivers, so we're going to pay you a minimum every hour just so
Like
you're
just
on the
stay in
app.
that area.
Yeah, and like that, I think that happens for those apps, but that's pay for outcome. So you're a marketer, you run a podcast. I have a podcast. I create a lot of content. Create a lot of content, right? What if it's we get paid for output of meaningful content every week? As another example.
You know what? That's what you know what? That's almost what the contingency recruiters are.
Yeah,
Almost.
it is kind of what they are. They get a salary, but like they
It's
get
low.
paid for output. Yeah.
Yeah, you're paid for output. Now
Yeah.
the other is pay for result. You said pay for
Well, pay for hour. You're just getting paid.
okay, pay for
Like your
hour,
hourly
pay
rate
for
is
result.
X.
Yeah.
You're going to work.
So how does this tie back into the workforce transformation?
Well, I think you're going to start seeing. So the easiest way to explain it is, and this is not my explanation, it's just the one that makes the most sense that someone has said that I've used, is let's just say like AT&T has 2,000. I'll make it 1,000 for easy math sake. They have 1,000 people using a customer success tool, right? Like a ticketing tool, so that they can answer customer tickets. So they have 1,000 people on staff right now. That software provider creates an AI agent that creates great outcomes, and then now that they no longer need 1,000 people, they need 100, right? But the software company charges per seat.
Right. So
So
you
you
went
had
from 1,000, you've just lost
1,000 seats
90% of
to
your
100.
revenue.
Yeah, 1,000 seats to 100 seats. You have a $900 user difference at $20 a user over the course of years, and the AI and the 100 people are still answering more tickets or the same amount, same or more, equally as well with the great NPS score. But you've lost 900 seats of revenue.
Yeah. Well, that's really not going to be, I mean, if you're the business owner, this is a great problem, a great situation you have found yourself in, particularly if we can start getting that kind of scale in staffing and recruiting.
But you can't. But like the software provider can't operate at that loss, so they're going to have to change the model of how they charge.
Yeah.
And that's going to change the workforce a little bit.
All right. So you just spent some time over with Dan Morey
Yes,
with,
sir.
is it Staffing Mastery? I believe it is.
So yeah, so his business overall name is Staffing Mastery. The bit like the a thing that I attended was the Staffing Sales Summit by
Yes.
Staffing Mastery, and it was fantastic.
I really I wish I could have gone to that. So give us the 30,000 foot overview. So some of your big takeaways.
Yeah. So okay, number one, I usually judge like I kind of judge a conference, right? Because I have to validate why I'm there, so I need to build pipeline and connection. Usually connection first, pipeline comes after. So 80-ish people, great conversations, great networking. Not a lot of that like, hey, we're busy with other parties and vendors. Very small. Everyone hung out together a lot, had a lot of really good dinners, a lot of really good. We were at Margaritaville in Orlando, and on the second day of the event, like the big content day, it was like 8 a.m. to like 5:30 of just pure content. So about at 3:30, my brain was like, I think you
You're
just need to
starting to fade out a little bit there.
you need to go sit in the sun. And so I went to the bar with some other people attending, and we reset and we got back into it like an hour and a half later. But the bar and the beach and the pool was fantastic. For a
Yeah,
good,
I mean, it sounds like a great place to,
yeah,
consume content and also have a nice little boondoggle, kind of a combo.
yeah, that's a good way to describe it. So like honestly, the people that Dan brought in to speak, like I think if you're going to present at this conference, you have to bring it because the like 8 to 10 people that I like had sat through their presentation, engaged with, it was high level. I've been going to conferences since 2018. Sat through a lot of you know, like, can we please stop doing panel discussions?
Oh God.
Can we please stop? And
Panel
then like
discussion. I mean, literally pull my
in that
fingernails
book,
out.
the Stop Asking Questions, he's like, I hate panel discussions. They are the laziest form of content.
It's
Everyone has
just so not natural. You just
it's
can't
not.
get a good flow going.
No. So he recommended, I read this book a couple years ago, and I ended up doing a session at Staffing World in 2023, I want to say. 5 people on a panel. So he recommends if you do a panel to just ask the attendees questions and only answer them for the entire second segment. So we spent we before people walked in, we put paper and pens out, had them ask those questions, and we spent the entire hour answering their questions. We had experts about answering their questions, like different. We had like technology providers, consultants, staffing CEOs, a CTO of a Legis there, right? A really large, like the largest staffing company in the world. And we just answered technology questions for an hour. We didn't prepare anything. We just said,
You just came in with your expertise
"Yep,"
and reacted.
and that was a really cool panel.
But that actually makes sense because the audience is getting what they want.
Yeah.
They're consuming what's important to them.
Do you know who does this
So,
too really well? I learned this. I learned that from a guy named John Barrows. He's a sales trainer, kind of a LinkedIn influencer. He does a sales training. So I was at a sales training as part of a large software sales force at this point, and we brought him in because he's in Boston, and we were in Boston for an event. And for the first hour and a half of his 3 hours, he was like, "I'm just going to answer your questions." So like any sales question about pipeline build, business development, closing, negotiating, we just asked him questions. And once that was done, he went through his presentation. Amazing, right?
I
Great,
love that idea. So
great use.
you're not worried about whether you repeat something. You just making sure they get what they want.
Yeah, and then like at some point you acknowledge like, hey, it's a good question. I'm going to answer this too, but I'll give you the answer now, and then we'll just quickly go through it and maybe add some nuance or context when we do the actual presentation that I have planned. It's really cool. Anyway, so the content at the Staffing Sales Summit was fantastic. Rochelle Carrington, mindset trainer, bulletproof mind, really cool. Still thinking about it today. David Stearns he's from Haley Marketing, how to
Oh,
differentiate.
David was there. Okay.
Yeah, how to differentiate your brand. Fantastic storytelling element, fantastic delivery. David crushed it. Uh, Robert
Shout out David.
Robert Reed, or I think it's his name, from Butler Street. Guy's like, I think he's Second City trained improv, and he gave us like a sales class, but he was just doing improv on us the whole time. It was really fun to watch. It was a really great show. And then, I mean, anyone else. So Alexis Meshi did a great social media course. Mike Bradbury, he did something really impactful on social selling as well. So the content was elite. The networking was elite. And therefore, those are my 2 ways of judging a conference. Obviously, pipeline build will...
Quality speakers and good networking.
Yeah. So, I mean, incredible. So highly recommend. It was oversold by about 20 people this year, and he's going to up it, but he can't go past 120 attendees next year. So when he opens it up, I would highly recommend signing up.
So any one particular kind of takeaway that you said, like the mindset coach was still
Oh
kind
my
of
God.
sticking with
So
you?
Rochelle,
Just as we wrap up here today, just give
yeah,
us
I'll give you
one
the
of your
mindset one
nuggets.
too. It's super fascinating, Tony. So it takes a little bit of, let me give you like a little bit of biology too, because it's highly relevant, right? You have your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, and then you have like everything that happens just because, right? So your middle brain is like the reptilian thing; it just does everything. Then you have that middle brain, and that's where emotions are stored. It's also where you store memories, and that's like how you remember. By the way, if you want to make good memories, you need to have lots of senses engaged. The more senses engaged, and when you create a memory, the easier it is to form the memory. But most of our subconscious operating system is formed between 0 and 7. So 0 years of age to 7. So my daughter's 8 months old. So we are forming her emotional operating system essentially. And then you have your conscious brain, right? So if your conscious brain is like, I live in a world of abundance and there's so many opportunities, but you grew up in like a really fearful state, then you're in conflict, and your subconscious is actually like hijacking your conscious. And I'm not the expert on this, Rochelle is, but like essentially you need to retrain your emotional brain to be in the abundance mindset, or the abundance feeling, or the joy feeling, or the happiness feeling. Because underneath, even though you know you should be happy and like everything's really good in your life, like if your 0 to 7 issue never got resolved, then you could be in conflict, and that's going to mess with your success. Was what she went with. How'd I do? Not
I
as the
think I think that's great. I think that's great. I think we're going to charge people for this session. I think this
could
is
do that.
a deep couch kind of moment right there.
Yeah, we more like what's Dak Shepard's podcast? What is that? That was a good one.
I'm the Joe Rogan. I got the Dax is not on my.
It's a good one. By the way, just so we all very clear, I'm a Freakonomics Radio and Masters of Scale.
Well, by the way, you go ahead and plug your podcast too.
Yeah, so I have a podcast with my co-host Lauren Jones. She's also my boss now. That was for a long time we were co-hosts and not coworkers.
I was wondering about that because it's been going. Your podcast has been around for a while. You're like 4 or 5 years now. 5 years.
March 2020. Yeah, so we talk about the intersection of people and technology a lot. We try to figure out the best chemistry of those two things so that you can have, scalable growth, and you're not throwing away money on tech that your team's not using. So we
What's the name of it?
It's called the You Own the Experience podcast. So we try to talk about
You Own the Experience podcast. Okay.
Yeah, in staffing, you own the experience, right? Like you're the only one. You're interacting with Tony. I'm interacting with the candidate. I'm interacting with my sales contact.
It's up to you.
It's all you. It's called accountability. It's maybe something that we're losing in the world.
And your emotional child of 0 to 7 better get used. Better buckle up, because you can't blame anybody but yourself if they're not happy with you.
It's a very, very simple thing.
Just
you like that? Anyway, yeah. Okay. So we talk about the intersection of technology and people. We build tech stacks. We manage change. We help you adopt, and then we help your business evolve and grow.
I'll have links down in the show notes. But what's the web address? What's the best way to find you guys?
So I kept the definite article out of the abbreviation, so it's just yoepodcast.com.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant for Leap.
Oh, it's Leap Advisory
People
Partners.
can find the podcast. That's easy to find.
Leap, yeah, leapadvisorypartners.com.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, Rob, listen, there's a lot here. I think maybe next time we'll take a slightly different. I don't know. You never know. Maybe we'll just come in totally unplanned like we did this one.
It was fantastic. I enjoyed the conversation. So,
well, maybe we'll do a little more tech, because you got your podcast, I've got mine. Maybe people would be interested in the tech side. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk. Listen, my range of topics can go from fitness, yoga, lifting, martial arts, all the way to API calls, webhooks, mail hooks. You tell me. I'm here for it.
I tell you what, we might just touch on it all, because the webhooks, the mail hooks, that's kind of interesting for all of us that are trying to grab our next client. So
yeah, big fan of
seeing you again today. I'm glad you had a good time down there with Dan. I'll have to check that out, and I'll meet you down there for the boondoggle next time.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate
it. All right, buddy. Stand by. And that's it, folks. Appreciate y'all hanging around. See you next time on Jobtopia.